welcome to Fantasia, home of the Melodious. My name's Azallea, and today, gonna be bringing you guys my Shaddoll Magician Girl deck profile. Now, this deck is going to be updated for the June 2017 ban list, so without any further ado, let's just jump right into this. So, starting off, we're playing 3 copies of Berry Magician Girl. Now, Berry Magician Girl is the searcher for the deck, so when you normal summon this card, you can add 1 Magician Girl monster from your deck to your hand. And also, all Magician Girls have the effect where if they are targeted for an attack, they get to special summon another Magician Girl. In Berry Magician Girl's case, it says once per turn, during either player's turn, when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets this card or targets this card for an attack, you can change this card's battle position if you do special summon 1 Magician Girl monster from your deck, except, of course, another copy of Berry Magician Girl. Now, this is really good because you're essentially getting a free summon if your opponent attacks into your Berry Magician Girl, and they can't get rid of it with generic removal such as Castell and things like that. They're going to have to go for blanket destruction like Raigeki, Dark Hole, in order to get rid of her safely. So she does pose a little bit of an annoyance to your opponent with that additional targeting, quote-unquote, protection. But yes, she can summon stuff from the deck. The next monster that we're going to go into, we play 1 copy of Lemon Magician Girl. I only play 1 copy of her because she's not too great overall, but it's always nice to have additional names for the Magician Girls for Kiwi's effect. Lemon Magician Girl says that once per turn you can tribute 1 Magician Girl monster, except Lemon Magician Girl, to add 1 Spellcaster type monster from your deck to your hand. So she can search out any spellcaster in the game that you essentially want, but the only downside is that you have to tribute another Magician Girl, which sometimes you're going to have too many of on the field, and sure, you can go for Lemon Magician Girl's effect, but if that's the case, typically you're already in a winning position, so not too useful overall, but her other effect is also pretty good. So once per turn, if this card is targeted for an attack, you can special summon 1 spellcaster type monster from your hand, but it has its effects negated, unfortunately. That's the only downside to this, but you can summon any level spellcaster from your hand, really high level ones as well, so that's pretty nice. But yeah, and then it redirects the attack to that monster, and if you do that, attacking monster's attack becomes half its current attack, which is really nice. It allows the Magician Girls to kind of run over your opponent's beat sticks if your opponent's dumb enough to actually attack into your Magician Girl monsters. Unfortunately, though, Berry does not actually redirect attacks, so that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so next off, we're playing 2 copies of Apple Magician Girl. Now, Apple Magician Girl, very similar to Lemon Magician Girl's effect, where if it's targeted for an attack, you can actually special summon a level 5 or lower spellcaster type monster from your hand, and then change the attack to that and have the monster's attack, right? But yeah, so that's the unfortunate part where it can't summon higher level spellcasters from your hand, which sucks. But really, most of the cards in this deck are going to be level 5 or lower, right? There's only, like, I believe 1 card, the Dark Magician Girl, that's going to be higher in level. So, yeah, but Apple Magician Girl, I run 2 copies because she has a pretty decent effect. So it says that if this card is destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can target up to 3 other Magician Girl monsters with different names in your graveyard and add them to your hand. So this is amazing recovery for, like, just adding back things like Kiwi, your berries, anything that your opponent actually got rid of, you can add back to your hand and then reuse. So that's always nice. Okay, so next off, we're playing 3 of probably the best Magician Girl in the archetype. So 3 copies of Chocolate Magician Girl. Now, Chocolate Magician Girl is really good because of her effect, where it says once per turn, you can discard 1 spellcaster type monster to draw 1 card. So this gets rid of the dead Magician Girl monsters in your hand, as well as some of these Shaddolls, because Shaddolls are also spellcasters. You don't really ever want to draw into your Shaddolls, but you know, you can always discard them for Chocolate Magician Girl. Unfortunately, the Shaddolls do not get their effect because the discard is going to be a cost, so unfortunately, you do not get that Shaddoll effect. But she does have the other effect where she's targeted for an attack. You can target 1 spellcaster type monster in your graveyard except for Chocolate Magician Girl and special summon it, then change the attack to that target, and then of course have the opponent's monster's attack. So she's really good because she is also a +1 because you get to summon something from your graveyard, unlike Lemon and Apple where you have to summon from your hand. So you're essentially not gaining any advantage. You're really just moving around cards from your hand to the field and things like that. Okay, but moving on, the next card that we have is 3 copies of Kiwi Magician Girl. Now, you play 3 copies of Kiwi because she is a hand trap. So during either player's turn, you can discard this card, and Magician Girl monsters that you currently control gain 300 attack and defense for each Magician Girl monster with different names on the field and in the graveyards until the end of this turn. And then of course, if she's on the field, spellcaster type monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects or be targeted by your opponent's card effects. So that's always really, really nice. So the blanket protection is actually including your stuff. So if you had Dark Hole while Kiwi's on the field, Kiwi protects everything. But the targeting effect protection is only for your opponent. So your opponent cannot target your Magician Girl stuff, but you can. So that's just like the best. Probably the best you can probably have for something like this in terms of protection. But yeah, you can easily summon her with the effects of like Apple Magician Girl, because Apple Magician Girl doesn't negate her effect. If you summon her with Lemon, Lemon does negate her effect, so that's quite unfortunate. But yeah, Kiwi's usually used at the end of a chain. So if your opponent, let's say, attacks into your Apple summons Chocolate summons Lemon, and then you drop a Kiwi Magician Girl after your opponent's monster's attack has been halved multiple times, you're going to deal massive amounts of damage, and it changes all of your Magician Girl monsters into giant beat sticks, so kind of mitigates the fact that they're all really weak monsters in themselves. Right, so next off, the last Magician Girl card we play, of course, is going to be your classic Dark Magician Girl. Just 1 copy. You don't need to play this. I just like playing it as just, you know, because it's a casual deck. It's just for fun. So yeah, she's just there as kind of like a deck mascot, although she does help add an additional name for Kiwi's attack boost. So that's kind of nice. She's also kind of nice to summon with Lemon Magician Girl because it doesn't matter if her effects are negated or not. So yeah, there's that. Okay, so next off, gonna go into some of these Shaddolls. So we play 1 copy of Shaddoll Falco. This is just really nice for just being able to reborn other Shaddolls, as well as reborn itself if it's destroyed, actually, or just sent to the graveyard. So all these Shaddolls are floaters, so they have effects that activate when they're sent to the graveyard by a card effect. So that's always really nice to keep in mind, because they can easily generate advantage that way. The next Shaddoll monster, we play 2 copies of Shaddoll Hedgehog. Now, Shaddoll Hedgehog is really good because of the fact that if it's flipped face up, you get to add 1 Shaddoll Spell Trap card from your deck to your hand, and if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can actually add 1 Shaddoll monster from your deck to your hand. So you're going to search something either way with this card, and that's always really nice. Typically, you're going to be searching things like Shaddoll Dragon, which we're going to now. Play 2 copies of Shaddoll Dragon. Really, really good card. I love this card because it has 1900 attack, and of course it's a level 4, but the fact that it has 2 really good effects. The flip effect says you can target 1 card your opponent controls and return it to the hand, which is always really good. It's non-destruction removal, and if it's an extra deck monster or something like that, you just return to the extra deck. You don't have to worry about it. And the other effect is, if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target 1 spell trap card on the field and destroy it. So this is really good because it's basically like a Mystical Space Typhoon, which is really nice. Okay, and the last Shaddoll monster that we play 1 copy of Shaddoll Beast. I don't like to play multiple copies of Beast, at least not right now. Of course, I could cut a Dark Magician Girl and play another Beast, and that would be perfectly fine. But in this variant right now, I just like to play 1 Beast. Its flip effect is that you can draw 2 cards, then discard 1 card. And its a graveyard effect is, if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can draw 1 card. So Shaddoll Beast is really great for just generating advantage, cycling through your deck, and things like that. I like to send Beast, if I'm using Shaddoll Fusion, the first card I really like to send is Beast. And then if I can get a Falco onto the field, if Falco's flip effect can summon Beast from your graveyard, and that's always really nice, then you can flip Beast face up and then get some draws and all that good stuff. Right, so the last monster that we play is 1 copy of Maxi, just to get additional draws if our opponent's starting to special summon and go off. And that does it for the monsters. So next off, we're going to go into the spell cards. Okay, so for the spell cards, starting off, we're actually playing 3 copies of Shaddoll Fusion. I don't have my 3rd copy of Shaddoll Fusion right now, so I'm using a proxy, but Shaddoll Fusion is so good. This is probably the best top deck that you could possibly get if you're up against a opponent who has an extra deck monster, because you can fusion summon 1 Shaddoll Fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or your side of the field as fusion materials. But if your opponent controls a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck, you can actually use monsters in your deck as fusion fusion material. So this was a revolutionary spell card when it came out, because you could just fuse from the deck, and it was just a free summon. You just played Shaddoll Fusion if your opponent had like any XYZ Synchro Fusion whatever out, and then you got free monsters on the field, and whatever Shaddolls you sent to the graveyard generated advantage as well. It was just so insane, but it still is pretty insane because of what we can do. All the Magician Girls, of course, are different attributes, so you can summon various Shaddoll Fusion monsters, whatever you think is appropriate for the moment. But yeah, pretty versatile card. Okay, so next off, we're playing 3 copies of one of my favorite spells in the deck, actually, Magical Dimension. Now, this card is so underrated. It's so good because it says, if you control a spellcaster-type monster, you can target one monster that you control, tribute that monster, then special summon one spellcaster-type monster from your hand, then you can destroy one monster on the field. Now, keep in mind that whatever monster that you destroy with this card, you don't target it. So it bypasses things that are immune to targeting effects. Also, Magical Dimension is amazing because it's a quick play spell, so you can use this on your opponent's turn. It's basically like a trap card as well, so it's really nice. It also helps your Magician Girls dodge effects. If your opponent's going to Castell something anyway, you might as well just tribute that Magician Girl that they targeted, summon another one out, and all that good stuff. Of course, if you summon something like a Chocolate Magician Girl, whatever you tributed is going to be in the graveyard, so Chocolate Magician Girl can bring that back. And the cool thing about Magical Dimension is that tributing the monster is a part of the effect. It's not a cost, so that if you tribute a Shaddoll monster, the Shaddoll monster will actually get its effect in the graveyard, so you get to go additional pluses off of that, which is really nice. So yeah, 3 copies of Magical Dimension. I just absolutely love this card. It's beautiful when it works in games. Okay, so next off, we're playing 2 copies of Secret Village of the Spellcasters. I only played 2 copies of these, and I don't play any terraformings and things like that. This is kind of just like a tech. It's not absolutely necessary because we're playing Shaddolls. Magician Girls actually have that power behind it as well, and that continuous advantage cycling, so that's always pretty good. Secret Village, though, just locks out our opponents. If we control a spellcaster-type monster, we play this, our opponent cannot activate spell cards, but it kind of is a double-edged sword, because if they get rid of all of our spellcaster-type monsters, then we cannot activate spell cards. So that's always something to keep in mind. It's you gotta be sure that you have the upper hand when you're activating this, just so that your opponent can't just break your field and then suddenly you're locked out of half your deck. Okay, so next off, we're playing 1 copy of Book of Moon. It's like a pseudo trap card, just flip something face down. The reason I like it in this deck is because you can actually flip your own Shaddoll monsters face down. So let's say you have a Shaddoll dragon, right, and you just normal summon it and you try attacking over your opponent's stuff. On your opponent's turn, if your opponent tries to attack into the Shaddoll dragon, you can use Book of Moon to flip your Shaddoll dragon face down, and then the attack will go through the Shaddoll dragon, will be flipped face up. You can activate its effect. You can return something from your opponent's side of the field to their hand. Of course, this varies depending on what Shaddoll monster you got flipped face up, but yeah, it generates so much advantage for you if you're using it on your own Shaddoll monsters, and it can also just, flip a large monster your opponent controls face down, so that you can attack over it with your Shaddolls or your Magician Girls and things like that. And there are a lot of cards that grant immunity to cards like Crystal Wing. Crystal Wing's a big problem for this deck. You can just Book of Moon it, flip it face down, then attack over it once you have something large enough like a Shekinah, right? Okay, so anyway, moving on, we play 1 copy of Foolish Burial because we're playing our Shaddolls. This is a toolbox, so we can, grab a Search with Hedgehog, pop a Spell Trap with Dragon, grab a Draw with Beast. There's so many different things that you can do with the Foolish Burial. I just like it as a nice little tech in this deck. Speaking of text, the very last spell card that we play 1 copy of Moonmirror Shield because Magician Girls are relatively weak. They're really small monsters. Of course, Kiwi's boost does help a lot, but most of the time if you don't have a Kiwi or you don't have enough Magician Girls to take advantage of Kiwi's boost to its maximum potential, Moonmirror Shield is actually really nice because it allows you to just run over whatever your opponent has. It's also really great to equip to something like El Shaddoll Winda. Then Winda prevents either player from summoning more than 1 time per turn, and she cannot be destroyed by card effects, so that's already built-in protection. But once you put Moonmirror Shield, she basically can't be destroyed by battle either, so that's always really nice. So yeah, that does it for all these spell cards. So yeah, there's some pretty good text in there, and I highly suggest you try them out. Next off, we're going to go into the trap cards. Okay, so for the trap card, starting off, we're playing one copy of Sinister Shadow Games. Now, this card, if you don't know what it does, it says you can send one Shaddoll card from your deck to the graveyard, then you can change any number of face-down defense position Shaddoll monsters you control to face-up defense position. It has obvious uses where you can send your Shaddoll monsters to the graveyard and get their effects, but also whatever you flip face-up that's already on your side of the field, you get their flip effects as well, because Shaddolls have both flip and graveyard effects. Just one card as a tech, it's really nice. When it does go off, and it can kind of help you get out of some situations. And it allows you to toolbox out of your deck as well. Next off, we play one copy of Shaddoll Core. Shaddoll Core is kind of a weird card, but it's a trap monster, and it does have its uses in this deck, though. So you can special summon this card as an effect monster. It's going to be a Spellcaster Dark level 9 with 1450 attack and 1950 defense, right? It is also treated as a trap card, but if summoned this way, you can actually substitute this monster for one fusion material that lists an attribute on a Shaddoll fusion monster. So if you're trying to go for a like Shekinaga, but you do not have a earth material left, you can actually use Shaddoll Core as a substitute for one of those attributes, so that's always really nice. Now, if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, including if it's destroyed by your opponents like Twin Twisters or things like that, you can actually target one Shaddoll spell trap card in your graveyard, except the Shaddoll Core, and add it to your hand. Now, unfortunately, Sinister Shadow Games is not a Shaddoll trap card, but this does allow you to grab back your Shaddoll fusions for free, which is pretty good. Okay, next off, we're playing two copies of Mirror Force because your Magician Girls can only proc their effects once. So once your opponent baits out the Magician Girl effects, they try to swing over them with another monster, you can flip that Mirror Force, and Mirror Force will just take care of their entire field. So I kind of like this as a nice protection for our monsters. Okay, so next off, we're playing two copies of Dark Renewal. Dark Renewal, if you don't know what this does, it says when your opponent normal or special summons a monsters, target one of those monsters and one spellcaster type monster that you control, and then send both monsters to the graveyard. Then you can special summon one dark spellcaster type monster from your deck or graveyard. So this is really nice for bringing back things like El Shaddoll Winda. You can bring back the Shaddoll monsters, like larger ones like Beast. You can even bring back something like a Dark Magician Girl. Now, of course, you can bring things back from your graveyard, or you can summon them from your deck. So it's really nice because you get to pick and choose whatever you want. But the important thing is that it actually just gets rid of your opponent's monsters. And it doesn't destroy, it sends. So if your opponent's monster is going to be immune to like destruction, if they're summoning something like a Beals, which Beals is actually kind of difficult for this deck to deal with, funny enough, but if they summon a Beals, you could use Dark Renewal and just send it to the graveyard. You don't even have to worry about it. And the cool thing is, of course, if you send a Shaddoll monster with this card's effect, you get to use that Shaddoll monster's effect in the graveyard. Okay, and the last card that we play three copies of Solemn Strike. Of course, I'm using proxies right here because I don't have my Solemn Strikes right now, but yeah, Solemn Strike's really good summon negation and really good effect negation, so it's really nice for just adding that additional layer of protection for Magician Girls, because the deck is still relatively fragile even with the addition of Shaddolls. So yeah, that does it for the trap cards. Next off, we're going to go into the side deck. Okay, so for the side deck, starting off, we're playing three copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit because you can't get enough of hand traps, and Ghost Ogre is one of the best hand traps in this format. Even though this is a pretty casual deck, Ghost Ogre still hits a lot of other decks as well. You can hit a lot of field spells and monsters when they activate while they're on the field, so that's always cool. Next off, we're actually playing, I love this card in the side. We're playing three copies of Lava Golem. Now, Lava Golem, you cannot normal summon or set the turn that you summon this card, but you contribute two of your opponent's monsters and special summon this card to your opponent's side of the field, and every standby phase, the owner of this card actually takes 1,000 burn damage. So this card is really funny because you can give it to your opponent. Even though it's a giant beat stick, it doesn't really matter, because if your opponent wants to use it, they have to attack into your Magician Girls, and of course your Magician Girls will just start summoning more Magician Girls and redirecting attacks and having this guy's attack. So you're basically going to get rid of it if they're attacking into you, but if they don't attack into you, which most people don't, because, you know, attacking to Magician Girls is basically a death sentence, the Lava Golem will actually help you win the duel by burning them for 1,000 every turn. So yeah, puts them on the spot, and it's pretty funny to watch them try to out it. Okay, so next card that we play is one copy of Raigeki for the field clears, because some of our monsters are really small. Even even though we do have Kiwi, she's somewhat unreliable because you do have to search her with Berry and have enough monsters in on the field and the graveyard for it to be really effective. So yeah, Raigeki does come in handy sometimes. Also 2 copies of Dark Hole. Of course, this deck does like to go first in its plays. We do have the Shaddolls and stuff, and it's fine, but you do want to set up a Magician Girl on the field, and hopefully with like something like a Secret Village and a bunch of back row, that's like the most ideal situation. Of course, on your later turns, you can start using your Shaddoll fusions and continuously generate advantage throughout the duel. But if you're going second, you always want to side in things like Raigeki and Dark Hole and clear your opponent's field so you can safely summon your little Magician Girls and then poke for damage and things like that. Okay, so next off, we're actually playing 3 copies of Mystical Space Typhoon as back row removal because we don't main any in our deck. And then we play 2 copies of Lost Wind, because Lost Wind does have the original attack of the monster if it was special summoned, and it does come back from the graveyard if your opponent summons from the extra deck again, so you can, it's technically like 4 extra negations, effect negations, and 4 extra times where you can have your opponent's special summon monsters attack points, so it's always really nice to just, if you want to be proactive and you want to attack into your opponent's stuff, you can flip a Lost Wind, have their attack, and then run over it with something like a Chocolate Magician Girl or something like that. So Lost Wind is pretty good in its uses. And last but not least, we actually play 1 copy of Solemn Warning. It's really nice to side in if you're going first, so that you get that extra summon negation, and just make sure that your opponent cannot get enough monsters on the field to clear yours out. So yeah, that does it for the side deck. Next off, we're going to go into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, starting off, we're playing 1 copy of Abyss Dweller. Now, Abyss Dweller is really great for shutting down graveyard effects, but also because of the fact that if you use a water monster as a material, all water monsters gain 500 attack, including itself, so it would be 2200 attack on the field, and because Chocolate Magician Girl is a water monster, you can actually get that effect if you use her as one of the materials, which is kind of cool. Next off, we play 1 copy of Castell, the Sky Blaster Musketeer, because he's general removal and pretty good overall, just gets you out of some nice situations. Next off, we play 1 copy of Tornado Dragon for additional spell and trap removal, because we don't main any. You can actually make Tornado Dragon and clear out some back row, but we do have the Mystical Space Typhoons in the side deck should we need extra help. The next card that we play is Performation Trapeze Magician. Trapeze Magician is kind of nice because if you're going on the offensive, it helps you a lot. You actually take no damage if the damage that you would take is less than the amount of attack points this has. So if you're taking anything 2500 attack damage or less, then you won't be taking that damage at all. So Performance Trapeze Magician is kind of nice for just preserving your life points, but also you can target 1 monster, whatever turn player it is, you can target 1 of their monsters, and it can make 2 attacks during the battle phase that turn, but then at the end of the battle phase it gets destroyed. But I like to combo this Trapeze Magician with the Utopia package, because with Utopia, of course, you can make your Utopia the Lightning, but I also like to play an extra copy of Utopia, so I play Utopia Prime in this deck, so you can overlay Utopia, Utopia Prime, and then you can overlay Utopia the Lightning. So Utopia Lightning can basically use its effect twice, and if you have a Trapeze Magician with your Lightning, you can actually attack with your and boost this to 5,000 attack on this first attack, and boost it to 5,000 again on the second attack. It almost never comes up, but when it does, it's just so satisfying. And Utopia Lightning, the reason why I play the extra copy of Utopia Prime to overlay in between is because again, Magician Girls have problems getting over larger monsters, so Utopia Lightning is kind of like a pseudo boss monster for this deck, and because we play so much back row that can potentially protect the Utopia Lightning, your opponent's going to be pressured to try and make a move and things like that. So yeah, Utopia Lightning, excellent card. But yeah, that does it for the XYZs. Next off, we're going to go into some Synchros. So for the Synchro, starting off, we're playing 1 Armades, Keeper of Boundaries. The reason why I like to play this card, it's 1, it's a level 5 Synchro monster, and 2, if it attacks or is attacked, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects until the end of the damage step. So this card is really nice if we're trying to go on the offensive. It's also really great for if you're, I don't know, somehow playing against Zodiacs or something and they have a Whip Tail under their monsters. Typically, you'll be losing that duel because it's Zodiacs, but Armades does help with some battle-related effects, and it allows you to safely attack into your opponent's stuff if you don't feel like attacking with your Magician Girls, if you don't feel it's safe. You can always make Armades and attack, you can bypass things like Mirror Forces and all that good stuff. Next card that we play, one copy of Stardust Charge Warrior. When this card is synchro summoned, of course, you can draw one card. It's always really nice, and it can attack each of your opponent's special summon monsters once each, which is cool because if you attach a Mumir Shield to this can actually just potentially wipe out your opponent's entire field, but that, you know, of course, rarely comes up. You have to draw into the Mumir Shield and have a tuner to make this. The tuner in this deck, by the way, is going to be Shaddoll Falco. It's a level 2 tuner, so if you have a Falco and like a level 4 monster, you can easily make this, get an additional draw, and potentially attack into a bunch of things. So that's always nice. Next off, we have one copy of Virgil, Rockstar of the Burning Abyss. Now, the reason why I play this in here is actually because it's a spellcaster type monster, and there aren't many good spellcaster type synchros. The reason I like this card so much is because if you have a Chocolate Magician Girl on your side of the field and your opponent attacks into it, Chocolate Magician Girl can actually revive this card from the graveyard. And this card actually has a pretty interesting effect where if it's destroyed by battle or by card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can just draw one card. So potentially you can just continuously bring this back. If your opponent gets rid of it, you draw a card. Bring this back with Chocolate Magician Girl again if they attack into it, if they're, you know, dumb enough to attack into it. You can potentially keep bringing this back. It's also 2500 attack, so it's pretty good in the beat stick department as well. And the last synchro monster that we play one copy of Black Rose Moonlight Dragon. Now this card, you can summon this with a level 5 in Shaddoll Falco, so you have Shaddoll Beast and you have Kiwi Magician Girl, but Black Rose Moonlight Dragon has a cool effect where if this card is special summoned or a level 5 or higher monster is special summoned to your opponent's side of the field, you could target one special summon monster your opponent controls, return that target to the hand. So that's always really nice. You can always potentially use it against decks like Blue Eyes or things like that, bounce back their Blue Eyes to their hand so it's dead. Hopefully they don't have like trade-ins or something, but you get the point. It's just pretty decent removal overall, and it can bounce back some potentially threatening monsters, so that's always nice. So yeah, that does it for the synchros. Next off, we're going to go into the fusions. So for the fusion, starting off, we're playing 2 copies of El Shaddoll Winda. Now, of course, I have a proxy for my second copies. I don't have it yet, but El Shaddoll Winda is so good because it cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, and each player can only special summon monsters once per turn while this card is face up on the field. And that's just so nice because so many decks now like to special summon a lot, and if you can get a Winda on the field, it is potentially game over for your opponent if they're so reliant on special summoning. And the next monster that we play is one copy of El Shaddoll Grista. Now, Grista in combination with Winda is so dirty, and I'll explain why. So, Grista says that during either player's turn, when your opponent would special summon a monsters while you have a Shaddoll card in your hand, you can negate the summon, and if you do, destroy that monster, then send one Shaddoll card from your hand to the graveyard. And this card is so good because in conjunction with Winda, Winda goes for attempted summons. So if your opponent attempts a special summon, you negate that summon, they can't special summon anymore for that turn. So that's always really nice. And Winda in combination with Grista and you have a Shaddoll card in your hand just locks them out of special summons, and it's really nice. Grista is also pretty good because you can summon it by setting an Alpha Magician Girl to the graveyard. Fueling additional Magician Girls into your graveyard is always really nice because the fact that, of course, Kiwi gets that additional boost when you use her effect. Okay, and the last fusion card that we play is one copy of El Shaddoll Shekanaga. Now, Shekanaga is great because she is a 2600 attack beat stick, so that's always really nice. But her effect is that when a special summoned monster activates its effect, when you have a Shaddoll card in your hand, you can negate the activation. If you do, destroy that monster, then send one Shaddoll card from your hand to the graveyard. And of course, all Shaddoll monsters get the effect where if they're sent to the graveyard, you can actually add one Shaddoll Spell Trap card from your graveyard to your hand. This includes both Shaddoll Fusion and Shaddoll Core, so that's always really nice. I don't play the Water Shaddoll monster, but you could do that if you wanted to send something like Chocolate Magician Girl to the graveyard, so that's always fine. But you can always cut, like, you know, the Utopia Prime or something like that from the extra deck if you want to play it. So there are options that you could do with this deck. You can kind of tweak it to your liking. Again, it's a really casual deck. You might not be winning too many games with it, but I just like to play it when I'm trying to have fun online. So yeah, then that's that for the extra deck, and that's it for the deck profile. So thank you all so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please leave a like, subscribe for more Magician Girl content, and leave a comment down below letting me know what I can do to improve. And until next time, take care.